You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local. Accountants and tax preparers talk about helping you, but here's someone with help you can use right now as you plan for tax season. EJ Pelton Company has a website with excellent financial tools, ejpelton.com. Click any topic: budgeting, college, debt, mortgage, income, insurance, payroll and benefits, retirement. Go to ejpelton.com right now, and later today, give yourself time to think about taxes and the help you'll need. ejpelton.com, open 52 weeks a year, always available for questions or tax help. EJ Pelton, a company to depend on at tax time. Think ahead. ejpelton.com. Call 332-3339. That's 332-3339.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the Southern states. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You know, I'm a pretty big proponent of the use of technology. I'm not a Luddite by any means. I know a lot of people who are, and none of them like me very very much. But I really do think that the use of technology is going to bring us forward as a population, as a human race. The use of technology can really only help us along instead of hinder us. So many people are afraid that, you know, with the use of the internet and with information so easily available, people are just going to be too smart for their own good, and they're going to question too many things, and they're going to start asking the wrong questions, and all sorts of things are going to happen that's just going to be terrible. And really, I hope that people ask too many questions, because that needs to happen. But technology is bringing us a lot of different conveniences. It's making us maybe lazy. Maybe we're just making ourselves lazy. But one of the things that technology is bringing us is delivery right to our homes in a much easier manner than what we've had for a long time, which is having to wait several days for a truck to get to our house, in sometimes longer than several days. And we got to wait for a delivery to be made. Even if you just ordered a simple item, you still got to wait a long time. So Ars Technica has a story about one startup that's going to, or hoping to, dominate drone-based delivery in Santa Cruz. So one day soon, they say, we will receive packages at our doorsteps delivered by your local friendly drone, I should say. Or at least that's the hope for a handful of drone delivery startups, some of which exhibited their wares on Friday at the Drone Data X conference in the coastal town of Santa Cruz, less than an hour's drive south of the Silicon Valley. There's just one major problem. The Federal Aviation Administration requires that drone pilots maintain line of sight of their vehicle. So this sort of puts the kibosh on just about anything you could ever want to do with a drone that is in any way practical. Well, an aerial courier company with a fleet of drones won't be operating in the United States anytime soon, but drone startups are drawn to Silicon Valley for access to engineering talent and venture capital. This has created a strange situation where there are a handful of drone startups that want to offer various flavors of automated delivery, but their services aren't legal in the United States just yet. And that's kind of the problem that we have now, which is that these systems are fully ready to be implemented, but thanks to the Federal Aviation Administration, they can't be. So it's yet another example of government getting in the way of progress, which government always will. It has to. Be it city government, be it state government, be it further up on the federal government, be it the world government in the UN, it's always going to get in the way. It's unavoidable. It has to. That's just how it is here in the States. And actually, that's just how it is all over the world. Anytime you have a state, it's going to be oppressive. It's going to get in the way. That's just the nature of it. So one of the most ambitious and well-positioned of these companies is something called Matternet, which is a nascent startup that has made a name by delivering medicine in rural areas of developing countries like Bhutan and Papua New Guinea. One of its co-founders, Andreas Raptopoulos, I think I said that right, I apologize, Mr. Andreas, gave a TED Talk in 2013. After emerging a few years ago from Singularity University, a sort of Silicon Valley startup school, Matternet made a few big announcements earlier this year, including its first commercial product, the Matternet 1. Now, nobody's going to argue with you that delivery of medicine to people in rural areas is a good and right thing to do. Well, nobody except the folks in the FAA, because they would very prominently argue with you. They would be very outspoken in their argument with you, because they, whether or not they know it or not, they're very much not in favor of the proper delivery of medicine to people in foreign countries or in rural areas all around the world, because they believe in a total state control over the airwaves and over the airspace. So they claim sort of jurisdiction over the air, and it's a very vain thing. It's a very selfish thing that they do, where they say that we own the airwaves, we own the skies, and the only way you're ever going to fly much of anything is with permission from us, because we own this. So it's not the people who own the air. It's actually the state who owns the air, because you have to get permission from the state in order to fly properly. So it's actually the state who's the owner of the air in their own way of thinking. Now, think about it this way. If I steal something of yours, does that make it any less yours? Well, no, of course not. I've stolen it, but it's still your item. Let's say I break into your house and I steal your computer and I run off with it. Well, it doesn't cease to be your computer just because I've stolen it. Well, that's sort of how it is with what we have in our state system, where the state has essentially stolen the air from us. And the state has essentially stolen airwaves from us. The state's stolen a lot of things from the people, the collective, and they claim it as their own. Now, it doesn't make it any less ours. It's just that they are willing to resort to violence in order to stop you from claiming what is rightfully yours. So that is essentially the building blocks of a state or of a city or of any municipality, is a willingness to use violence and force, which are synonymous, against you if you try to claim what's rightfully yours, be it your own money, be it your own property, whatever it may be, which they claim jurisdiction over. They're willing to resort to violence. And we have a call. We done something wrong. Caller, you're on the air. What's going on?
Okay, I'm going to give you a new perspective here. You do not need a pilot's license to fly an airplane. I don't know if you know that or not.
In Florida, I know you don't.
Okay. So, and the FAA only has jurisdiction in restricted airspace. So you literally can fly in a contraption that you built all across the country legally without a license and or contacting any of the control towers, as long as you're not in their airspace.
Okay, so you have a little bit more perspective than I do. What's your take on the drone systems then? What's your take on drone delivery?
The problem there, it's commercial. As a private individual, you're not under the jurisdiction unless you're in, like, which kind of makes sense, Atlanta Airport, where there's big airplanes landing. They call it Big Beware Boeing. It's B airspace. So within 30 miles of that airspace, the FAA does have jurisdiction, because you don't need someone with a little airplane or a homemade airplane flying into a plane that has 250 passengers and killing them all.
Right, that's legitimate protection of property.
Sense, that type of regulation, because you could kill a lot of people.
Sure.
But where you're not in a controlled airspace, which is a lot of the country, I've flown a lot of this country with ever having to talk to a tower or being controlled airspace, you can do it privately. But once you enter the commercial realm, that's a totally different jurisdiction, because if you're a corporation, if you read Hale versus Hinkle, the primary function of a corporation is for the public well-being. That's its ultimate responsibility, not to make profit and gain. So therefore, if you're incorporated like Amazon, you placed yourself under the jurisdiction of the government by being incorporated. You agreed to the rules, regulations, and said you're going to obey them. However, we have Neanderthals drafting these regulations. And I've said for years, unless you have 20 years in a particular industry, you should have no authority to draft a rule, regulation, or a statute. But you have to understand the industry you're regulating. That's the problem. We need to get rid of the Neanderthals that are drafting legislation regarding technology, especially drones, because they don't know anything about it. They're just afraid of it.
Right, yeah, I totally agree, because you have this problem, especially when we're talking about the tech sector, where there's different regulations on, say, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that was passed by people who just don't understand how copyright works or how media works or anything. It's just senseless.
Let's take radio. Were you willing to the Telecommunications Act of 1934?
Sure, yeah.
The Neanderthals have got to get out of broadcasting. They have no clue. They've been hindering radio for years because they're clueless. You know what their answer was to the radio problem? Granting people that want to play radio LP licenses, low power 250 watt FM licenses, so they can play radio and repeat what commercial broadcasters are doing and cluttering the airwaves, instead of allowing AM broadcasters a portion of the FM band to truly serve the public, because they are political Neanderthals.
Well, you have to keep them,
especially where it comes to technology.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind too that the good of the public is never in mind when it comes to legislation.
Never in mind. It's either done out of fear or lining someone's pocketbook. Always out of fear or lining someone's pocketbook.
Yeah.
You're doing someone a favor, so you pass the legislation to increase someone's bottom line in one industry or another, or you're so afraid that you're passing legislation. Oh, you can't go out there. You may get hurt. It's like having your mommy. That's what these legislators are. They're lawmakers. You know, Russell, initially this republic was founded on the principle that you would do your normal job and go to the legislature to...
Uh-oh. I think we lost him. That stinks too. He was making a really good statement. Well, the idea there is that, and I think he's right, is that that's where we get the idea of a nanny state. You know, that's where the whole concept of nanny state comes from. I wish we hadn't lost him. Call back if you can. The problem that we have now is that it's exactly right, is the idea of a nanny state. And I think that's sort of the buzz phrase that's used for it. I hate buzz phrases so much, but I'll use it in this case because it does sort of make sense, is we have this nanny state where people are complacent too. If you have a nanny, you have somebody who's always taking care of you, you don't really want them to go away. You want to be sort of dependent. You want to be very dependent. So now you have, say, the system of welfare, the system of housing, system of all these different systems that are in place, which are sort of thinly veiled attempts to help the public, which are actually helping some contractor somewhere where a congressman or a state senator is on the board of that particular company that's profiteering off of this. You have this, of course, crony capitalism, and you have a nanny state. The two go hand in hand. So this applies to basically any field. You know, these regulations against drone delivery are probably put in place by people who are on the board of the FAA, who are in bed with a delivery company like UPS or the USPS, because a delivery system that's allowing for drones to deliver packages to your door within 30 minutes, it does severely threaten the U.S. Postal Service. Now, I don't know if that's the reason for this regulation. It may just be that there's the doom and gloom guys who think that drones are the next the number of the beast or something along those lines. Who knows? I mean, there's any number of reasons why somebody would want to outlaw drone delivery. And the extra perspective that the caller added was very useful, that the FAA doesn't really have jurisdiction except for in commercial airspace. Is very interesting analysis. So then that means that because these drones are operating in a commercial capacity, the FAA can claim jurisdiction over this. So it's very unfortunate that they claim jurisdiction over commercial airspace that's being used by drones. Now, there is a rationality for some of it. As the caller pointed out, the idea that a drone flying into a commercial aircraft and crashing it and everybody dies, that's not something that anybody wants. Nobody wants a drone to be flying around willy-nilly in the Atlanta International Airport, which is, of course, the most superior airport in the face of the earth, or the Chattanooga Airport, which is the most inferior. I say this as a Georgian. I'm very biased. Very biased against the Chattanooga Airport. No, I'm kidding. It's fine. But you have the idea of the drones flying around willy-nilly, and people are afraid of that. People are afraid that these drones are going to crash into the Boeing 747s or the Dreamliners, and everyone's going to die, and it's going to be a terrorist attack that's going to be linked to ISIS or whatever. But I think something that people fail to recognize also is that the state is not good at preventing attacks. The state is actually really, really bad at preventing attacks. 9 times out of 10, it seems, anytime they claim that they thwarted or prevented an attack, it was one that was partially instigated by them in the first place. Because the FBI will do some sort of sting operation. Well, they will themselves give fake supplies to somebody who claims to be a terrorist, and then they'll sting them. They'll come in and say, "Ooh, we caught you trying to blow up a building with stuff we gave you that didn't actually work." It's just silly. Half of the time that they thwart a terrorist operation, it seems that they were helpful in instigating it in the first place. kind of like with Silk Road, where they had agents who were working with Silk Road. Of course, Silk Road's not a terrorist organization. They had people who were working with Silk Road, the online drug distribution system, and they were actually actively helping out the Silk Road. And then they bring in this giant sting operation and claim that they were single-handedly working to get rid of some massive drug buying and selling network that actually didn't make any sense at all. You know, it's silly that the state is constantly trying to prop itself up. And really, it doesn't have a whole lot of option but to do so, because not many people have much faith in the state these days anyway. And the idea of people who constantly still have faith in the American system and in the state is actually kind of troubling, because why would you? You know, why do you? Well, last month, the company that's working on delivering objects to your house via drone trumpeted the fact, according to Ars Technica, that it would be conducting significant real-world tests this summer in a country with a developed air traffic network. In Switzerland, Matternet will be working with Swiss Post, Swiss World Cargo, the air cargo division of Swiss International Airlines. So they say, can we make this access to goods frictionless? Ratopoulos posited to Ars Technica after the conclusion of his Friday presentation at the conference, outlining how in developing countries, road and transit infrastructure is often pretty lacking. The affable Greek entrepreneur outlined a near-future scenario that can deliver a 1 kilogram or 2.2 pound payload at a distance of about 6.2 miles within 15 minutes. Now, 6.2 miles is not a very big radius. Anybody can tell you that. 6.2 miles is a very tiny radius. So then that means that they'll probably be focusing on downtown areas, cities where there's a high density of population in one particular area, and they'll bring about a center, right? They'll have a delivery center where everyone has their drone that's sent out from this core location. We'll call it the ATC. So from this ATC, they'll send out the drones, and then they'll be picked up by you at your house. So in high density locations, so like say downtown, 6.2 miles away from downtown Chattanooga, say the very apex of downtown. I'm not sure what particular region or what particular building you could say is the epicenter of the downtown area in Chattanooga. But from that point, they'd pick it out. From that point, 6.2 miles in a bubble around that, a drone can deliver a package to you, you see. So this is a very useful technology, extremely useful. And of course, they'll have other stations all around the different regions as well. So this could be a very, very big business very quickly. Think of a faster growing UPS or a faster growing FedEx, where FedEx is sort of exploded out of nowhere. Same sort of thing is going to be happening here if Matternet's allowed by the feds to continue to operate. Eventually, the plan is to create a waypoint for the drones where they could automatically swap batteries to extend their relatively limited range and pick up and drop off cargo. Right now, a human is required to put in a new battery. A company like Whole Foods, Uber, or Postmates, for example, could maintain its own fleet of Matternet drones and then deliver ordered goods via drone to customers within that city. So it seems Matternet drones could be contracted out by any company who has enough money, which has enough money to purchase them. So this could open up a whole new area of export for all sorts of different companies, small businesses even. So Matternet drones are not limited to big business. It's not limited to Amazon or Walmart or Target or Kohl's or whatever. It's not limited to that. If you have the cash, and they'll probably have a program for startups, then you can have drone delivery for your small business. So this is a very big opportunity for a lot of small businesses. Think of the implications here in Chattanooga. There's a lot of deliveries that could be made. Say a restaurant that specializes in, say, like a pizza establishment that's local. We all like this particular pizza establishment. Say like Jet's Pizza. We all like Jet's, right? Great pizza, New York style. Awesome. Okay, so what if they had drone delivery instead of the extra money and extra cost that comes in having a delivery person? Now, that delivery person is not going to be antiquated, right? He's still going to be able to do driving out deliveries that's outside the bubble of the drone. But for that bubble, for an extra cost, perhaps, you can have a pizza delivered to you via drone that you've already paid for via credit card. Now, I'm just using this as an example, but this is a very big opportunity that a lot of different businesses have. Say you make like Subway style, sub sandwiches, hoagies, heroes, whatever you want to call them, Philly cheesesteaks, whatever. You deliver those, and you pay for it via credit card, including tip, of course. Of course, it's America, we all tip. And you have that delivered to your house via drone. So there's a lot of opportunities that these Matternet drones bring about. And it doesn't have to be Matternet. Matternet's just the catalyst for this big explosion of drone delivery that's going to happen. It's opening people's minds to the opportunity that we have now for drone delivery. This is all assuming that the FAA isn't going to claim jurisdiction over this, possibly illegally, and try to hamper this particular business and try to hamper this particular industry even. So hopefully that does not happen, but there is a possibility that it will. Unfortunately, that possibility is very large. Unfortunately, that possibility is actually imminent, where the FAA will claim you cannot fly these drones because we haven't figured out a way to make money off of it yet. 9 times out of 10, I'm noticing, and I use that a lot, that statistic 9 times out of 10. But it seems that most of the time when there's regulation and there's requirement for licensure, this is for this is exclusively almost for revenue purposes. Think about driver's licenses. I guarantee you the people who issue out driver's licenses on the higher up level don't actually care about driver safety. It's all about revenue generation. And speeding laws are not actually about public safety. Of course, they're about revenue generation. If I go 70 into 65, that's not going to kill anybody unless I crash into somebody, which I could do at 65 miles per hour anyway, and the damage that would be caused is negligible with a 5 mile per hour increase. So it's all about revenue generation. The state runs itself like a business. It's all about revenue generation. They're thinking about product. They're thinking about marketing. They actually have marketing wings for the city. They have PR managers for the city. They have PR managers for the state. The state runs itself as a business, and that should not be. The state should not be about revenue generation. There are very few responsibilities which the state has. You could argue that protection of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, property, all that sort of thing is a responsibility of the state. I don't particularly want that service, but you could argue that that's a service which the state is authorized legally to offer. So you see, the state seems to be more focused on revenue generation than the state is focused on actual furtherance of us as a human race and us as a populace. Unfortunately, that is just the case.
This is a mob mode. This is a mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of my...
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak techno babble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better than new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58 between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. The field grows more crowded in the bid for the GOP presidential nomination.
Wow. Folks, it is a long way from a little brick rent house on 2nd Street in Hope, Arkansas, to the White House.
That's former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee just now launching his second White House bid from his hometown of Hope, Arkansas. ISIS vowing more attacks like the one in Texas it claims to be behind. The suspected shooters, Elton Simpson and Nadir Sufi, were killed.
Garland Mayor Douglas Athas says he isn't ready to give the Islamic terror group all the credit yet.
I have no way of knowing. Certainly, I don't know of any evidence that links them to actually having had a part in this.
Meanwhile, Simpson's family released a statement saying they are heartbroken, calling the attack an act of senseless violence.
Fox Radio's Tanya J. Powers. Fox News. We report.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Microsoft is wanting to bang the cybersecurity drum with advanced threat analytics, according to Ars Technica. Now, we're all familiar with Microsoft, right? I mean, nobody's going to come out and say, I don't know what Microsoft is. Microsoft has been in a bit of trouble with the feds before, mostly due to a ridiculous antitrust lawsuit that was filed by people who didn't understand how technology worked, and they were very upset because the feds were like, I'm not sure what they were mad about precisely. I mean, I know what they were mad about, but I don't know what their reasoning was. But they were upset that Microsoft was packaging Internet Explorer in with Microsoft Windows. And they were mad about that because they said it was unfair to Netscape and Mozilla. And so it doesn't make any sense. It's like being mad that a particular Honda car is going to have a Honda engine in it. Like, of course it is. Of course it's going to have these particular parts in it. That's just sort of how it is. So them getting mad at it just seemed really dumb. But now Microsoft is sort of trying to get on the Fed's good side, it seems. So Microsoft has announced a raft of security and data protection software on the first day of its Ignite conference. The company said that attacks on companies were increasingly using legitimate tools. Organizations are being compromised through access made with valid, although stolen or otherwise compromised, user credentials rather than malware, with a Verizon report saying that more than 75% of breaches occur this way. Now, note that the state really can't do much of anything about that. There's not really a whole lot that can be done to prevent this from happening, other than immediate preventative action on the side of one of the companies which is being attacked. Other than that, there's not really a whole lot that can be done. A lot of people will say, well, the feds need to protect these different companies. Well, that would be an option, but it's not the best one. Because honestly, I don't feel comfortable with the protection of the feds. I don't want to pay for it, for one. I mean, nobody does. And I also don't really want it in the first place. I'm being forced to pay for a product which I don't particularly want. Of course, Microsoft is being forced to pay very high corporate taxes for services which are obviously inadequate because Microsoft is still being attacked by different international or national entities. So this needs a different approach to network security, Microsoft says. And new software built to sniff out anomalous activity, even if it looks superficially legitimate. In November of last year, Microsoft bought enterprise security firm Errata. And at Ignite, it announced a product based on this purchase called Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics, or ATA, now available in preview. So ATA uses a combination of log file analysis, deep packet inspection, and data from the Active Directory to detect inappropriate access to corporate networks. Log files can reveal, for example, users logging on at unusual times, from unusual machines, or from unexpected locations. Deep packet inspection, or DPI, can show more obviously malicious behavior, such as attempts to use pass the hash or other credential reuse attacks. So this is something that's very, very advanced. And obviously it's being put out by Microsoft, which is one of the most technologically advanced companies that I can think of anyway. Microsoft, Google, Apple, all those big Silicon Valley companies are always on the bleeding edge, unless it's a startup that's doing something that's totally out of left field, and one of those big Silicon Valley companies will just buy them. But other than those few cases, these Silicon Valley companies tend to be on the bleeding edge. They create the trends that everyone goes crazy over. And it's kind of funny how that works too, because we have this whole hipster generation that's so, and you know, I'm among them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, I'm not part of that generation. I definitely am. I'm more millennial than others actually. But I sort of think that it's funny when you think about it, how you have all these kids, right? You have all these kids, by kids I mean older teens and 20-somethings, who are so into being into the subversive culture, right? Like they want to be in this subversive culture where they're like, man, you know, I don't go for the big commercial thing. I only buy free trade coffee, you know, which I do too because it tastes good, right? Like my reasons aren't the same as theirs. I buy free trade coffee because it actually legitimately tastes good. It's better than, you know, instant stuff you buy at Walmart, so I'm down with it. And they buy it because A, it tastes good, and also they feel that they're making some sort of good, you know, they're doing some sort of good in the world, and they donate money to Habitat for Humanity and feel good about themselves. But I just get so tired about this hipster trend that we have where, I mean, yeah, the clothes are kind of cool, the music's good, and the some of the things that it's bringing about are actually good, but the pretentious high up nature of it just drives me nuts, right? Like, yeah, I have weird political views, but I don't think of myself as higher than anybody else because of it, right? I mean, there are Republicans and there are Democrats, and they have legitimate reasons for being that. And it's not, sometimes it's not because they don't understand the system. It's just that they have a different belief in how systems should be run. I tend to think that there shouldn't really be much of any systems, but they have a different view of politics. They have a different view, a whole different worldview, potentially, even religious view that's totally foreign from mine. So I can't say that I put myself on a higher up pedestal than them. It's just that we think totally differently. Unfortunately, their system is directly sort of oppressive in that it forces me to agree with it if it's properly enforced. Fortunately, systems that these people want to enforce can't ever be properly enforced because the systems are too big to be efficient. So I don't really have much worry about any sort of oppression against me that's in any way significant, because I don't really have to worry about them because they're way too big and way too cumbersome to ever be much of a threat. It's easy to subvert. So these political systems are just dependent on oppressing people. They have to. They're based upon force. And it's kind of weird how young people are actually very pro-force when you think about it. And I was thinking about this the other day, how a lot of the, you know, the hippie generation, I guess, the neo-hippies, maybe you want to call them, the hipster generation. And I don't mean to talk down to hipsters because that would be very hypocritical. But a lot of people in my generation are very for social programs. They're very much for benefits. They're very much for, you know, this or that, not realizing perhaps that this has to be backed by force. This has to be done violently. It has to be. There's no other way. And these people are all about peace. You know, they say, oh, I want peace on earth, goodwill towards men. Okay, cool. But that's not evident in your political ideology, because your political ideology requires use of force against otherwise peaceful people. And by that I mean social systems, social programs have to be made with, have to be completed, if they're done by the state, with tax money, right? I mean, that's how it works. That's how the state generates revenue. Tax money or revenue generation, whatever. Either way, you get a bill in the mail. You get a bill somehow. And with that bill comes the unuttered threat of violence. Because if I don't pay that bill, you know, if I don't pay whatever tax or whatever revenue they want me to pay, then there is that threat of violence behind it. There's a gun behind the bill. There has to be. Because otherwise, how would they ever enforce it? If I just say, I'm not going to pay that speeding ticket, I wish I could say that. But if I say, I'm not going to pay that speeding ticket, that's stupid. You know, this is an immoral charge against me. I did no wrong. I didn't commit a sin. I'm not going to pay this because this is wrong. Well, that's all well and good. But unfortunately for me, if I say that, then the bill piles up and it gets bigger for lack of payment. Then eventually an officer will come to my house and drag me away to jail for non-payment, or I'll be forced to be in court or whatever. See, these are all backed by violence, but this is all to support a social program. That's what it all is in the end. It's to support a healthcare system. It's to support housing projects. It's to support some sort of subsidiary, subsidized something or another. Who knows? You know, it could be any number of things. And it's also, of course, to support foreign wars. It's to support foreign aid for countries I don't agree with. It's to support all sorts of different things that I do not want personally. So through violence, I'm forced to go against my morals to donate money so-called voluntarily to a state which I do not agree with, for programs I do not agree with, for uses of force against people I have no qualms with. So you see, that's why the state is immoral. That's why taxation in the form that we have here is immoral. And that's why social programs can't possibly be moral in a lot of the ways that we have them today, because they are backed by violence. They have to be. So the generation, I think, has it all wrong. And it's not just my generation. It's every generation before it, too. Has it all wrong. The Republicans are wrong. The Democrats are wrong. Some of the libertarians are wrong. All of the socialists are wrong, obviously. The communists are wrong. All these different political ideologies are wrong because they have a state behind them, which is backed by violence. Violence doesn't work. Violence is a Band-Aid on a leaking dam. It just cannot work. It can't. There's no way, you see. So violence is a great sort of suppository. It's a great way to stop people in the temporary capacity. But look at the American Revolution, where they'll threaten you with threats of violence if you don't pay their tax systems. But eventually, that dam is going to bust, and there's going to be an outpouring of non-compliance, to put it in a very light way. There will be non-compliance on a mass scale. You see, so these oppressive systems are what creates a lot of the ills that we have today. Or people are like, well, you obviously you have to support war, don't you? I mean, don't you want people to go off and defend you and such and such? Well, I don't actually support much of any of the wars we've been in since 1940s and 1930 something. So no, I don't actually. I don't want to pay for that. Well, you have to support have to pay. They get all mad. People get so fired up when you say, I don't want to pay for a system I don't believe in. And they say, well, the greater good, freedom isn't free, yada, yada. Okay, whatever. We'll just go with that. So you see, it's all about force. It has to be about force. There's no other way around it. That's what they think anyway. There's no way around it. It's a necessary evil, is what they'll say. Well, if it's evil, then it certainly isn't necessary. You'd think anyway. If it's evil, then morally I cannot comply. I can't go with that if it's evil. I will not have any dealings with this if it's evil. But they try to force you and say that it's necessary. Well, it's a necessary evil. Okay, whatever. Well, anyway, enough about that. The war on drugs doesn't work. We all know that, right? I mean, who's going to tell you that the war on drugs is A, a good thing, and B, successful? Nobody. So there might be somebody who's, who used to work for Reagan, who will tell you that the war on drugs is great and it stopped a lot of violence from happening because, the cartels are not violent. And the cartels were not created because of the war on drugs. The cartels were not created to fight off federal ceasing of export of drugs. That just doesn't happen. There's no way that the cartels are upset about legalization of different substances, you might say, because it hampers their own business. There's no way they're upset about that. Well, the end of the war on drugs is imminent. We all know that. TechCrunch has a story, and the emergence of the venture-backed cannabis industry. So when the news broke that the Founders Fund, the proudly contrarian venture firm helmed by PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, was going to invest a major $75 million in Privateer Holdings, a company which is focused on producing, distributing, and educating consumers about legal marijuana, it opened the floodgates for other investors to barrel on in. So we've seen startups like Ease, which just raised $10 million, and Y Combinator-backed Meadow. He says, when you look at America, our fundamental thesis is that this is a mainstream product consumed by mainstream Americans, said Brendan Kennedy, Privateer CEO, today at TechCrunch's Disrupt New York, saying 54 to 58% of Americans believe that this product should be legal. About 85% believe that medical cannabis should be legal, and you can't get 85% of Americans to agree on much of anything. So why is it then that it's not? Now you might argue that that cannabis use, marijuana, weed, whatever you want to call it, use for personal recreation is irresponsible. Sure, you can argue that. Okay, fine. We'll go with that, actually. We'll just go with the idea that marijuana is not any less harmful than tobacco, as not any less harmful than excessive use of alcohol or what have you. So we'll just assume that it's on par with all of those things. But it needs to be used responsibly, and it's the the state's duty, obviously, to enforce the responsible usage of this particular plant. So, that being the case, the state now needs to regulate it and needs to make it for medical use only. Okay, whatever. So, now that it's for medical use only, and 85% of Americans, apparently, who have been polled, agree that it should be, Why isn't that happening? Why don't we have a revolution? Well, in Georgia, we actually do. In Georgia, there's cannabis oil that can now be used if you have a lot of different horrible, awful diseases that mean you're basically, you're degenerating very quickly. I don't want to say you're going to die because it's not always the case, but you're degenerating very quickly. You're in a lot of pain. Thus, you have a right to the usage of marijuana. So now we've left it up to the state to determine when it's okay to do something. And that's obviously never a good solution. Both Kennedy and his investors at Founders Fund, Jeff Lewis, I guess is how you say, refer to legalization as the end of prohibition, which is a strong allusion to an era in the early 20th century when alcohol was illegal. We all know what prohibition was. The high-level macro idea, he says, is that for the last 75 years, there's been this really crazy war that doesn't make any sense. And one of the key tools to perpetrate the war on drugs was the demonization of cannabis, despite what medical professionals said Lewis. We think the war on drugs has been really bad for our country. Of course, you have to consider the expenditure that goes into this, all the different programs that funnel money into this war on something that doesn't actually harm a whole lot, if anything. It's like, imagine if there was suddenly a war on tobacco, or a war on consumption of alcohol, as happened back in the 1920s. What if there was suddenly a war on the consumption of something which is commonly, there's a war on orange juice now. Well, now it's become the forbidden fruit. People want it because it's subversive. If you convince a population that this particular item is subversive and it's cool, then they're going to go for it. If it's just something that's everywhere, nobody's going to care about it. So I guarantee you that nobody would ever think one single secondary thought about the usage of recreational or medical marijuana if it was legal all this time. It's just like cigarettes. People say, oh, you smoke? Okay. It's not really something that people go nuts about. Well, yet the emerging legal cannabis industry is not without its contradictions, most notably how the war on drugs was punishing to communities of color, and yet many of the entrepreneurs entering the space are white. Rapper Snoop Dogg may become one of the exceptions after he started raising capital for a marijuana-focused fund. Now, of course, if our friend Bob Marley were still with us, I'm sure he would be backing one of these as well. But nevertheless, this just shows that state-backed programs which are working to outlaw and enforce the outlawing of a particular substance really just don't work. It's a war on everybody because it's a war on our pocketbooks. It's a war on our pocketbooks because they need excessive amounts of money to fund this program, which most Americans don't even want. Kind of funny how that goes. Well, a video of a cop killing a man, a slaying of a man, won't be public until the footage is played at a trial, according to Ars Technica. It seems inevitable that the bulk of the nation's police forces will one day be outfitted with body cams and dash cams. And most of them already do have dash cams, and a lot of them have body cams by now. The stocks of the two leading companies producing some of this hardware, Digital Ally and Taser, attest to that. They are up substantially as police departments big and small are gobbling up such devices left and right. And of course, we're paying for them. The authorities say that the rush for... I really hesitate to call them authorities, by the way. The people who work for these police forces say the rush for the surveillance gear is being done in the name of transparency to build a reviewable record of law enforcement's interactions with the public. Now, obviously, every action which a police officer makes while on duty should be recorded in some capacity. That's just how it should be. It should be a matter of public record. Obviously, they're doing this while on the clock. Imagine if there's a employee and part of this employee's job is, say, filing paperwork. Okay, cool. Well, there needs to be a record of all the paperwork that's filed. There needs to be a record of basically everything this employee does. But imagine if the employee raised a stink and said, I'll call my union if you try to keep a record of what I do, or I'll just turn off your security cameras inside your building. That's not the proper way for an employee to act. Well, the employee in this case, of course, is the police officer, and the employer is the public. But unfortunately, a lot of them don't see it that way. They see themselves as higher up. Now, not all of them obviously do, but some of them definitely do. So when should that footage become public? Policies vary nationwide. Seattle police have created a YouTube page for their footage, but much of what is shown is blotched out to protect the people's privacy. The Los Angeles the Los Angeles Police Department, the LAPD, said that the agency isn't likely to release its body cam footage, and officers there will get a chance to review footage before making an initial statement about what happened. So they'll get to see what happened all over again before making a statement, which is a luxury which you or I would not have. So the police are already getting a leg up. They're getting some extra help from their buddies in the police unit in the Fraternal Order of Police, which you or I would not get. There's no way. The latest fracas over whether a police video should become public is playing itself out in South Carolina ahead of the upcoming trial of North Augusta Public Safety Officer Justin Craven. A dashcam captured the white officer killing the black man, who is a 68-year-old Ernest Satterwhite Sr., in the aftermath of Craven pulling over the man on suspicion of drunken driving. Now, suspicion of drunken driving is not equating to an actual crime having been committed. It's suspicion. So the police officer pulls you over because he thinks you might be driving drunk. Now, an actual charge is not being made against you. You're not being cited for anything upon having been pulled over. Craven's attorney, Jack Swerling, said the video's release might soil prospective jurors' opinions about the merits of the case, both in favor or against of the defendant. He said the video would be repeatedly played and commented on in social media and elsewhere. As such, he's asking a judge to keep the video under wraps. So until the conclusion of the trial, the video will not be released to the public. The South Carolina Press Association said the video should be released promptly, as the only people that haven't seen it yet is the public. Authorities say Craven followed Satterwhite to his house in Edgefield County. He approached the driver's side of the car and shot the man up to 4 times last year. The officer said that the man grabbed my gun, quote. So the episode was captured on Craven's dash cam. The officer is accused of discharging a firearm into an occupied vehicle, a charge which carries a maximum 10-year prison term. The city of North Augusta has agreed to pay the dead man's family $1.2 million to settle a wrongful death suit. The video was viewed by lawyers in the case, but nobody else. The North Augusta Public Safety Department and the city of North Augusta have declined to release the tape so far, as have the 25-year-old officer's prosecutors. Donnie Myers, the lead prosecutor in the case, said that the time was not ripe for the video to become public. Doing so, he said, would be harmful, unfairly prejudice the pretrial opinions of potential jurors, prejudicial to the defendant, and not in the interest of justice. So the public being informed is not in the interest of justice, it would appear. Which seems a little bit contradictory because we've had videos being released of different events along with jurors. I mean, jurors have already seen a lot of different events which they are jurors on. And a lot of times it's easy to just lie anyway and say, I have no idea who, Michael Brown is. I've never heard of the thing, you see? So it's just silly. The whole idea is just silly. They're worried about tainting potential jurors, and I suppose I can see that, but it seems like they're just stalling at this point. Now, the jurors are obviously going to see that footage anyway, so I'm not sure what the worry is. I mean, obviously you get an unbiased jury of your peers, but I mean, that doesn't really exist anyway. Good luck finding an actual unbiased jury that's actually of your peers, right? Well, Uber for Money is for real now. And this is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. You can listen to us on the TuneIn app. Just get the TuneIn app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. It's Hot News Talk Radio on the TuneIn app for your smartphone. You get on your iPhone, your Android phone, your BlackBerry, Windows phone, whatever you have, you can get it on there. You can even get it for your computer as well. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com. You can click on our half off button. You can see a lot of, or up to 50% off button. You can see a lot of the deals that we have going on right now. And our website is hotnewstalkradio.com. Definitely worth checking out. If you're a listener to the show, go to hotnewstalkradio.com. Get the TuneIn app and search for Hot News Talk Radio on TuneIn, and you can listen to us there on the TuneIn app. Also go on Twitter and search for Hot News Talk Radio, and you can see all the tweets we're making about the different shows and about different political issues on Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. So Uber for Money is a real thing now. Uber for whatever has become something of a derogatory phrase in the startup world, but there isn't really a better description for what Poland's Idea Bank is doing. You summon an ATM using an app on your phone, then a car, a rolling bank vault actually, and it pulls up. What makes this especially unique is that Idea Bank is using a fleet of BMW i3s, Munich's cute compact electrics, for the service. Now, that may not be the obvious choice for a car that's filled to the headliner with stacks of euros, but the service, Mobni, it's in Polish, I can't read it, is geared primarily towards business owners who've got a wad of cash to deposit into the company's accounts at the end of the business day and presumably would rather not carry that amount of money into a branch or street ATM. It's a fee-free, commission-free, and can be set up automatically to show up at an address of your choosing at a predetermined time. Because the service is currently limited to Warsaw in Poland, the i3 is a shrewd choice. It'll likely never run beyond its electric range, no gasoline, no emissions. So it's it's interesting to see how there's a lot of different services which are essentially Uber for something or another. And in this case, it's Uber for money, where you order a car and it delivers money to you after you've obviously ordered it to be deposited from your bank. So lots of different interesting services are coming out thanks to the ideas that have been sparked by Uber. This is Hot News Talk Radio, and this is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. Nuganomics.com and David Toulis is coming up right here on Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
When my brother and I opened our first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hicks and Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 954-9591. That's 954-9591. And visit Dr. Ross at 7405 Shaliford Road, Suite 320. Ross Chiropractic, helping your body heal itself. Because when your spine's in line, you will feel fine. Call 954-9591. That's 954-9591 for Ross Chiropractic.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas, every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you,